Hey everybody, I'm Brandon.
Hello everyone, I'm Daniel.
And I'm excited for Star Fox on Switch 2.
Well, I'm not quite as excited.
But we've decided to talk about what we dislike
and what we do like
about Star Fox for Switch 2.
Good luck!
I am excited for the game, yes, but it is the third version of Star Fox 64 and the fifth version of the Lylat Wars. We've done this a lot of times. You know, I forgive going from Star Fox Super Nintendo to Star Fox 64 because Star Fox 64 is very transformative overall. It adds in elements to the story that weren't there before, like, you know, James McLeod. He's a big element of the Star Fox 64 story. But in terms of like remakes, remasters, this is going to be the third time we have done this set of levels. I remember being incredibly like deflated with Star Fox Zero really at its announcement from the very beginning, because we were going back, we were rebooting the series after so long. So instead of moving the story forward, the saga I had been following my entire life, we were going back to ground zero, Star Fox Zero, and doing it over again. While there are a lot of elements of Star Fox Zero that I do like, it might be controversial, but I do like the controls, I like the actual gameplay. I think the level design is pretty uninspired, unfortunately, and the new element to the story, which if you aren't aware, is General Pepper worked with Dr. Antros to create this portal technology that ends up being a big element of the level design in the game. It kind of falls flat. Like, there's very little build up to that moment. You get that right at the end when you go to face Andros, but it doesn't feel like it holds any weight. So like I said, I was really deflated with Star Fox Zero. And because of that, and there's evidence of me talking about this because Daniel and I did a discussion about it, I didn't want them to go back to Lylat Wars, do a quote-unquote classic-style Star Fox game, but then I saw Star Fox for Switch 2, and I immediately changed my mind. Visually speaking, the game is so transformative. The script is transformative. They're going to be delving more into the story. So I got excited about that. I am looking forward to those elements of the game, but there still is a part of me that wishes we were building upon what came before. Not necessarily Star Fox Zero's reboot. I would rather just go back to the previous iteration of the timeline and bring that forward. Consider Command canon or not, it doesn't really matter to me. I like the characters that we had up to that point. I still think Star Fox Assault has my favorite iteration of the cast up to this point. We have the character development between Fox and Wolf. We have Crystal coming onto her own as a member of Star Fox. We have Peppy really understanding that he needs to retire after what happens at the end of that game. It felt like another chapter in the saga of Star Fox, so I'm sad that we're not going to be doing that this time. However, if this is the true start of something new, and something deep down tells me that it is, I think I can be okay with it.
So despite my opinions on this game, something I am very much interested in right now are the visuals. Just the first thing that we see in the game are just the clear, crisp visuals of us just flowing down into Corneria, and it was really impressive to see just how well fleshed out this world can be now, and how well thought everywhere else in the world of the Lylat system can be. You see stages like Zonus, which looks so different. Like, I literally saw that and I was like, this is Zonus? Like, it's unironically was like that. Because comparing it to before, like, you get like the gross, toxic, sludgy texture of the original, but now it's like actual waves of water. Nintendo water is always going to be some of the most impressive stuff I ever seen. I gotta do a whole thing on Nintendo water, and this is a prime example of it. Even when you're flowing down into Corneria and you have like the classic, the waves that flow up when the R-Wing is flying down very low to the ocean. It was impressive back then in the day, and it looks amazing now too. Stages like Solar, man, that is the biggest one for me, because you compare those side by side. Solar in the original is just a bunch of red texture everywhere, but the one in the new version, the new iteration, you get to really see like the lighting that's at work, that the textures of the lava flowing. It's so brief, and I'm so curious to see more of it in like the boss itself. But that kind of visual fidelity is something that I've always been wanting to see from a series like this, and I think it shows just how serious Nintendo is with the Switch 2 about their visual prowess. I think people will continue to underestimate, I guess it's kind of disingenuous to say, but how behind the Nintendo has been all these years, because nowadays you see games that they just take advantage of what they have and run with it. Like you saw this not too long ago with the original Metroid Prime Remastered, like that on GameCube, that pushed the visual prowess as far as that console could go, and we saw that repeat again with the Switch, where Remastered pushed again the visual prowess of the Switch 1 as far as it could go. And then I saw Metroid Prime 4, and that was just amazing to think that that's on a Nintendo console, and finally we're starting to see that kind of visual power being used for other series. And Star Fox probably wasn't the first one I thought of, because the rest of the series is very much like it's more of an artistic, stylistic choice that we see in games like Assault, and even in Star Fox Zero was kind of flatter than what I would have expected a game like that to be. But now you get to see just the realism, like you're inside the briefing room and the glowing lights that bounce off of the fur on the characters. Man, it's such a unique thing to look at now. And I, again, with the visuals and the characters, I don't think that those characters look bad per se. It's hard to get used to it after what we've had before, but if they're going for a style that they originally started out with way back in the day with the original Star Fox, with the more like puppet realism, then for the most part it's gonna be okay. I think it's gonna be okay. It's definitely not the first choice I had, and there are still some characters that we're gonna have to get used to, like Falco, but I mean, those visuals are a very intentional, deliberate choice, so gonna have to trust what they go with. All in all, I'm excited to see where this visual identity for the series goes. Like, are we finally going to just tie this down, and this is going to be the visual style for Star Fox going forward if we get a sequel to this some point in the future, in the near future, hopefully? I'm curious to see if that's going to be how this series looks from now on, because it's definitely a lot grittier than I expected. You see the things like the prologue for James McCloud, and man, that's some very high budget stuff, but I'll get to that in just a moment.
Am I the only one that finds it weird that they took a moment in Star Fox Direct to talk about the split control scheme that you can do with another player, where one player controls the R-Wing and then another player controls the target reticle with a mouse, but they didn't mention there being any gyro controls? Can I not do that independent aiming of my R-Wing in a single-player setting? I do admit that if that was an option, the game would be a heck of a lot easier than it is, but then why can you do that in multiplayer? I guess I fail to understand. Is that an option and they just didn't talk about it? It doesn't really make any sense to me. You know, going from Star Fox Zero, the one thing I didn't really want to lose from that game was the ability to independently aim from my R-Wing. At a baseline, you can make new levels that are more intense, more difficult, because you have that bigger range of control, and doing it with gyro, and even one person using mouse controls, is a lot easier than what they were asking the player to do in Star Fox Zero, so I think a lot less people would be intimidated by that setup. I mean, look at Kid Icarus Uprising on 3DS. That's basically the setup that's going on there, except it used the touchscreen and not gyro controls. So many people have been talking about bringing Kid Icarus Uprising to Switch or Switch 2 with either mouse controls or gyro controls or just twin stick controls. Twin stick controls, you could do that too! Are these options in the game? I'm really baffled if they're not. Like, I am curious about playing through the game with another person using that split control scheme, if that's my only option. I guess at the same time, is there anything stopping me from putting a Joy-Con in my left hand and then using the right Joy-Con for the mouse and playing co-op by myself? I imagine that's what, like, you know, speedrunners or score attack players would do. I'm curious, but just no gyro controls in general feels like a really weird omission to me.
So something I didn't expect to be excited about from the Direct is multiplayer. So Star Fox 64's multiplayer, it's fairly basic, at least from my perspective, comparing it to something like Star Fox Assault. Like Star Fox Assault has some of the craziest multiplayer that I could have ever expected the series to have, because essentially this was made originally as a multiplayer game that was essentially given the story afterwards. But in a game like Star Fox 64, and in this case Star Fox for the Switch 2, like, the story is coming first, right? That's the main thing that we're focusing on, because that's how it originally was. The multiplayer came afterwards. So to see the multiplayer fleshed out in such a crazy way, like, it feels like they're making a completely different game again. And it's all in first impressions and whatnot. There's like 3 modes and like 1 stage for each, as far as I'm aware at the moment. So whether there's more to be discovered from here on is something to be seen, but just the prospect of it, just the fact that there's 4v4 online, Star Fox versus Star Wolf, that's too perfect, honestly. It was always meant to be something that was meant to be way back then, the 4v4, and that's just something that I think is the potential of being really well and fleshed out. I feel like in this day and age, this is something that can slowly be built upon and have more modes, more stages, more things to be unlocked. We don't even know if there's more things to unlock for this in the single player mode. Originally, you would unlock things like being able to run around on foot by clearing everything in single player. The same thing with Star Fox Assault. There are some things where you get high scores on stages, and it would unlock new weapons or stages themselves, characters. Those could all be unlocked via multiplayer as well. So I wonder how much they're going to take from that, because I can't see this being as iconic as the multiplayer in Assault, and it's definitely not trying to be. It's going to be something entirely different. It's working to become something that stands out as online, because you can play this online with everybody, whether it's with friends, whether it's with strangers. This is something that is taking a completely new approach to Star Fox multiplayer, which I'm glad for. This might be a pillar of it. Who knows? Like, this might be something that people can consider playing more so than the story, or maybe they will focus on the story first and foremost. We're not sure, but I like to see the variety there. I like to see the different kind of options we have available, the different modes thus far. It's very likely that I'll bring in my friends like Brandon and Amalia to play multiplayer for some rounds, but in the end, it probably isn't going to be something I'm going to focus too hard on. I don't know. I need to see more of it and play it myself and see if it's going to be something I'm going to be addicted to, because I very easily could be. Star Fox multiplayer has always been such a unique thing. There's not really any kind of game like it where you're doing dogfights in the air or land. I'm assuming there's also landmaster levels as well. That's just the thing, we don't know just yet, but it won't be long till we find out.
So one thing Daniel and I are both excited about is the multiplayer. Star Fox Zero had no multiplayer outside of the split control co-op in the main campaign, and Star Fox 64 3D, while its multiplayer is better than the original version of Star Fox 64, it was local only. You couldn't play it online, and that really dragged that experience down for me. So I was really excited to find out that Star Fox for Switch 2 would have 8-player online battles, until they started explaining some certain elements of it. There are 3 maps. You have Corneria, you have Ficina, and you have Sector Y. Each one of these maps has its own bespoke gameplay mode, which I think is cool. Corneria, it's about area control. With Ficina, it's about collecting these energy things that come out of these meteors. I don't really know what that has to do with Ficina, but, you know, at least it's unique. And then Sector Y, you're collecting cargo and bringing it back to your base, which is essentially a capture the flag style mode. I always felt that, like, Star Fox, just standard dogfights, didn't actually work very well as a competitive multiplayer mode. You don't have enough abilities in order to make that interesting, if that makes sense. Like, if you start shooting your friend, they're gonna somersault, and then you're gonna somersault, and then they're gonna somersault. There's not enough maneuvers in order to make that interesting. So I think rather than the traditional deathmatch, and instead having goal-oriented multiplayer modes is a lot more interesting for Star Fox. But there's only 3 of them. 3 modes might be enough. I think 3 modes, but only 3 maps, might be where the issue is. In Star Fox 64, you unlocked more features for multiplayer just by playing the campaign, And I hope that's also true here, but as of right now, I'm not so sure that's the case. And that's without even mentioning that in Star Fox 64, you could play with the Landmaster, you could eventually play in an on-foot mode, and they didn't show any of that in the Direct. That stuff could be there, but I'm just going based on what we've seen, and if what we've seen is what we get, I'll be a little bit disappointed. And I know I said earlier that a traditional deathmatch mode doesn't work super well in Star Fox. In a 4 versus 4 setting, I think there could be a little bit more intrigue there. So I am a little bummed that that's also not a feature. The game comes out in less than a month, and I kind of assumed that everything they showed us about the multiplayer is what we're getting. But maybe I'm wrong, and I would love to be.
So whenever I go back to Star Fox 64, I can't help but compare it to how aspects of Star Fox Assaults could make it be an even better experience. And the main thing I think about is just the level of storytelling. So storytelling in Star Fox Assault is so much more fleshed out than what we had in previous versions of this game, which is just 64 and the original basically. But going forward from there, like they added cutscenes, they actually talked to each other in the briefing rooms where they had discussions. The original Star Fox 64, a mission begins, it's General Pepper telling you one line, Fox saying, I'm on it, and that's pretty much the whole thing. And then you go into the stage and everything is so like segmented off. They're all in their own little bubble of what they do. And most of the discussions is pretty much just one lines going back and forth to Fox. They'll talk about the environment or they'll just speak to one another, right? But they don't really do that as much as I feel like they should, because Star Fox Assault really takes like the banter to be more of a conversation, not just like commenting on what's happening. The biggest example I can think of is Aquas. Aquas is such an interesting level to think about because this is the one level in which there's no, your pilot friends, they're not there at all. They're not cooperating with you because you're the only one in the Blue Marine. Every other stage, they're participating in some way or form. Even if you're on the Landmaster, they're up in the skies helping you. And in this one, they don't have a part in Aquas, and they actually use that to have more of a conversation with these characters than you normally would. Like you'll have the ones where Slippy's talking about the Blue Marine, Pepe's like, "You're the best, Slippy," and Falco's like, "This thing's never gonna hold together," and and Slippy's like, "Sheesh, Falco, what do you know?" And that's fun, you know, that's more fun, and there's more interaction between these characters one-on-one than there are in other stages that you normally would find, because they're trying to keep them relevant, they're trying to keep them in the story. And I think it's so cool that we're probably going to get a lot more of that with this game. The new Star Fox shows a lot of in between cutscenes. It's going to be you're in the briefing room talking to General Pepper, or they're just kind of chilling out doing their own thing. This is like their opportunity to really flesh out these personalities and make them their own, instead of just like the standard, oh, Falco's the cocky ace pilot, Slippy's the nerdy mechanic. Like, no, you can really build upon that and just have so much more. We saw a little bit where Slippy was nerding out, talking about the stuff within the base with Fox and Falco just kind of sitting around and just being like, oh, there he goes again. It's fun. It's fun to have those kind of little bits and pieces. And I don't know any other Star Fox game that really took the time to flesh them out in just moments of peace like that. There's always something going on. The storytelling is going to be so much more thought of and fleshed out than we have ever expected before. There's not really any other moments in Star Fox 64 that I can say, oh yeah, that was a huge character building moments, you know? It's pretty much just these caricatures of personalities just kind of talking back and forth to each other. Not in a bad way, but it's still very memorable in its own sense. It's so interesting to think about a segment of the story that we've only ever heard about. We've never seen any visual interpretation of it. But James McLeod's his prologue was probably the highest budget of anything I've ever seen come out of that series in just those few minutes. This is the most characterization we have ever seen with James McLeod, and they also make it a point to let you know that there's like this one portion that says he is presumed dead. So is he alive? Is he out there somewhere? Is he actually going to show up at the very end of the game? Spoiler alert, when you do the hard difficulty routes, or is he just going to still be the ghost of the past and he's never going to see his father again? it kind of ruins a bit of the story and Fox's character if you bring him back. But I mean, it would still would be pretty hyped to see him. I don't know. That would be wild. Is there going to be anything beyond that's going to be teased for what's coming in the future? Or is there going to be any other arcs? Are they going to put back more in the game that was originally cut so that there's more story and building off of it? Is it literally going to be just the same map that has all the story beats that we know from beginning to end? I don't know. That's one of the most mysterious things about this game, because it feels like they showed us so much in that direct that there's just so much more to be shown off from this point forward, and I'm just very curious to see what else is hiding in this game, if anything.
So Star Fox, the team, has generally had 4 members outside of Star Fox 2 when there were 6. Why is there no co-op? I think a way to really rejuvenate interest in Star Fox 64, just, being Star Fox 64, is letting a second player play alongside you. I think 3 and 4 might get a little busy, but you have so much more screen real estate. The R-Wing is so much more zoomed out in Star Fox on Switch 2. So I think there's a good case to just let a second player pilot an R-Wing and play alongside you. There would be moments in some of these levels where characters interact in particular ways, like, oh, Slippy's being chased by a bogey again, we gotta help him. That if player 2 was playing as Slippy, then those things wouldn't happen, right? I think we can forego some of that. I don't think the characters have to stop talking to each other necessarily. And again, the game might end up being easier, but perhaps you could up the ante, put more enemies on screen, make them deal more damage. I think there's some way that the campaign could be molded to allow a second player to play alongside you. It's just always been weird to me that Star Fox is about a team of pilots, but we only ever play with one of them. For the first time, a 4-player squad of Star Fox members will be able to play on a team together against, like, Star Wolf when you play online multiplayer. It feels like a missed opportunity. I would like a future Star Fox game to have co-op in some way, whether that's in the main campaign or a separate mode where you do missions. I don't know. It feels like a way they could have elevated Star Fox for Switch 2 even further beyond what they've done, and further remove it from just being a remake of Star Fox 64.
So this kind of wraps in along with storytelling, but it's such an important part of the Star Fox DNA that I think I have to make it a separate point. I'm really excited about the voice acting. So we're in an era in which, like, voice direction is so much better, quote unquote. Like, I think people will look back and they'll play Star Fox 64 and they'll listen to the voice acting and be like, this is what you all thought was your childhood? Yes, it is. The voice acting back then, it's very cheesy, it's very campy, but I think some of the delivery of those lines are just so iconic that I can't imagine that they can recapture the kind of inflection, the kind of delivery from back then, just coming back and replacing it in this day and age. Like, they redid these lines in Star Fox 64 3D on the 3DS, and I don't think any of them quite capture the essence of what was in the original one. Like, sure, they're compressed, and there probably wasn't any specific voice direction behind them. I mean, back in the 90s, it was such a Wild West era of voice acting where there were some shows and games that had direction, some that were just like, they threw them into a booth and said, here, read the script, with barely any context. If you go back to any show that you used to watch as a kid, like for me, anything in the 90s, like, some of them, maybe they don't have the best voice acting, but you remember them because they had that kind of silly, cheesy dialect, something that isn't really pronounced as like Hollywood level voice acting, but it's very memorable and charming because it had that kind of silly kind of inflection to tones and whatnot. Pigma is a very weird character in both this game and in future iterations like Star Fox Assault, where he's kind of a humorous mercenary slimeball kind of villain. Like, he's got the daddy screamed real good and all those lines and everything, but now in Star Fox Assault he's taken a lot more seriously. He's like an actual grimy, dirty scumbag of a person, and that fits him perfectly. I think having that more gruff voice instead of that like generic cartoony, like high-pitched squealing pig voice, or those slobbery kind of, that's the best word I can use, in Star Fox Assault, that slobbery kind of voice that he has in there, which was perfect for him still in that game too. But this interpretation feels a lot more mature, and it feels a lot more like what I feel like they would have gone for back then if they had the budget to do so. No, the voice direction, you get a little bit of it for the Japanese voice direction for Star Wolf on the Japanese website. Everyone else on there, I think it has potential to be not quotable as much as before, but at least voices that you remember, you know? Like, you think about Star Fox Assault, I can't really think of any one-liners that stay in my head as clear, as crisp as they do in Star Fox 64. And maybe they're not going to go for that, you know? I mean, they're not going to go for getting the one-liners like do a barrel roll or anything. They're probably just going to have them say, tell Fox to just dodge or something. Like it might not be there. I don't think we should expect it to be there. I don't think we should expect these iconic voice lines to be there, and perhaps instead just be open to new interpretations of it with this new voice cast. I'm 95% certain, don't quote me on this because it's not confirmed or anything, but I'm 95% certain that Star Fox, Fox himself rather, is voiced by Zach Aguilar. He's done other voices like Tanjiro from Demon Slayer. He's done the main Byleth voice, the male protagonist from Fire Emblem Three Houses. He's done Byleth's voice as well. He has strong protagonist energy, and I feel like him being Fox would be very, very fitting. I'm not confident enough on the other ones to really say, but I feel like that's him for Fox. And I think it suits him very well, you know. Voice acting has changed so much in the last, like, couple of decades alone. There's so much stronger voice direction. I've spoken with voice directors in the past in interviews and whatnot, and it's such a different situation than before where they were pretty much just thrown into booths, as I mentioned earlier, given lines, not always directed to do so. The voice direction is just as important as the voice actor themselves. Like, if you're not being put into the situation, if you're not clear enough on the context or the source material, it just doesn't come off quite as right. And I don't know if that was the case for the original Star Fox 64, but there's just some magic in that one where those lines are always going to live on in our heads iconically. I'm very open to hearing what these new interpretations are for this series. So if it's going to be like this going forward, as far as I can say right now, I can't complain.